One of the videos I did a while ago was talking about cruiser ready firearms usage, shotgun usage specifically. So that's where you would have the firearm, safe direction, pull the trigger on an unloaded firearm, unloaded pump action shotgun that is. And that way, when you, I keep putting the safety on as I have it, that way when you grab the gun, all you have to do is pump it, safety's off, and then you bring it to target and you pull the trigger. I don't like that method. I've said why I don't like that method. Let me just pump it quick and get it ready again. What I prefer is a loaded magazine tube, unloaded chamber, safety on, and then if you want to release the action, use the action release button. That's what it's there for. So I will pick up the firearm. I know that I have to potentially go to work with it. Rack it with the action release button. Safety is on, and then when it come up to target, take the safety off and then pull the trigger. So what we're going to talk about is dry fire. Dry fire is one of those techniques that you can use, one of those practice methods that you can use to pretend you are firing your gun, to do everything up until the point of breaking that trigger. And you can feel that trigger break, but from that very second the trigger breaks, before the primer would go off, you're doing everything up until that point. Once the primer would have gone off and the round would have fired, you can't simulate that in a safe environment. So what do we need for dry fire? Number one, we need a firearm, and it needs to be unloaded. Know how to unload your firearm and to safely check that it is unloaded before you start this practice method. Number two, we need a safe location to do our dry fire. That means if we mess up and we put ammo in the gun and I'm aiming down at my my corner wall of my basement that is stone 90-degree angle underground, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to get some stone fragments and stuff splattering back at me. Granted, I'm 15 feet from that wall, but I'm not going to injure anyone. I'm not going to, other than myself being a dumbass, and I'm not going to potentially injure a neighbor or people upstairs, anything like that. When we are dry firing, again, making sure the gun is unloaded, we want to go through the process of everything up until the point of pulling the trigger. So, in this case, verify the gun is unloaded. I have now racked it, it's ready to go. You can make dry fire as narrow as you want or as wide as you want with an asterisk that you can't actually shoot anything. So in this case, I'm going to show you kind of where I go and where I recommend kind of you start. So this is getting the gun ready administratively in your hands. There's loud noises or riot, Red Dawn, whatever going on outside, and I'm like, man, I need a shotgun. So, or a gun, a firearm. Grab it. It's in your hands. There's no direct immediate threat. Load it as you would load it. Load it. No ammo. Again. And now we're going to start. So I'm walking around. There's paratroopers coming down from outside, and I'm like, crap, I need to do something. So let me charge up my firearm. So in this case, action release, pump the gun. Okay. Now, I see a threat. Go through this at a slow pace until you really get comfortable with it. I'm going to choose the a certain knot on the stone over there, a little mark on the stone, and that's going to be my target. So I'm going to raise my firearm into the direction of that stone. I'm going to safety off, finger to trigger, feel that trigger, and then as I need to, pull the trigger to the rear, and the trigger breaks. Now from this point, the simulation is over. There's still more stuff you can do, but the simulation is effectively done. Because at this point there would be a bunch of recoil. If I wasn't holding the gun properly, it would, kick back and hit me in the face because I like having the Mossberg Shockwave as a firearm. Whatever's going on, you could. After this point is what you practice at the range for that full reality kind of thing. But from here, okay, I've now shot. Now what happens? Break the gun off of my line of sight, pump it. A lot of firearms instructors will say pump it in your line of sight. That's not so easy with the Shockwave. So this is what it would feel like. From here, pump it in your line of sight. Now the gun's ready to go again. If you need to do a follow-up shot, you can. Now, if I choose not to shoot, I can break the gun off my line of sight, safety back on, finger off the trigger. So, the only time my finger is on the trigger is when my sights are already on target. Not moving to the target, on target. I could be on target like this. If I'm close enough to whatever I need to shoot, like my safe door is right over there, I could hit the safe door without aiming down my sights. That's fine. It's 4 feet away. But if I need to shoot at something 15 feet away, I kind of need to be up on my sights. When I'm up on target, if I need to go to the trigger, I can. That's fine, because if the gun discharges in this direction, that's what it's there for. That's why I have a gun. If I am not in the conscious decision to shoot, my finger is straight and off the trigger. The safety can be off at this point once I'm on target. But when I'm off target, safety goes back on. This is something that for some reason people didn't understand in that last video. Use the safety, it's important. Some people made a good argument about the placement of the Remington safety, which is on the side of the trigger guard. I agree. That's why I run a Mossberg. I'm not saying Remingtons are bad. I'm just saying you need to practice and train to your equipment. Let's do this with another gun. This is my Glock 17. You can choose any kind of firearm you like. I think handguns, specifically Glocks, are pretty simple for this. There are dry fire magazines and mechanisms and things you can put in the gun. I don't have any of those right now. This is just an empty gun, nothing in the magwell, nothing in the chamber. Verify that. Again, choose a safe place on the wall, press out. You don't have to go super fast, but get the good muscle memory in place. So from here, I'm holding the gun in a safe position, pointed in a safe direction always. I'm indexed in relation to my torso. I decide to shoot something from here. If I had to, I could just put my finger on the trigger and pull the trigger. But I'm choosing to practice presentation. I'm choosing to practice bringing the gun up to my sights, the gun to my eye line. My eyes don't move to the gun moves to my eyes. I bring the gun up, get it where I need it, get my good grip as I'm bringing the gun up, and then bring my finger to the trigger and break the shot. From that point, again, the simulation breaks down. I don't have that recoil impulse. What I like to do is take a mental pause right at that point here, because the simulation has broken. As I'm doing this, as I'm pulling the trigger, I want to see what, and this is one of the reasons I like red dots on handguns, or green dots in this case, is as I pull the trigger, I can see if I'm jerking it one way or another. I can see if my dot is moving up or down or whatever. I can see that direct input without being worried about flinching from the shot or anything. When you're shooting firearms, you want to be sure you're not flinching or blinking or closing your eyes when that explosion is going off. It is counterintuitive because there's an explosion going off in your hand, but the gun is made to contain that. Practice keeping your eyes open. You'll also notice, I'm going to do this at the camera. I'm a cross-dominant shooter, right-handed, aiming at the camera. The gun is in front of my left eye here. That's just how I shoot. Practice, get used to it. I could do this over my right eye. I could do it over my right eye. There we go. It just takes a little bit more work, and it's more intuitive for me to go over my left. That doesn't really matter. After that kind of simulation break, the gun has fired. Now what I like to do, because the simulation's over, I kind of safely pull the gun back into my workspace and I'll rack it. This is not something I will practice doing in full force. You'll see some people, even in, look on like active self-protection police videos or something, where a cop is trying to shoot, and they will have shot and their gun doesn't malfunction, but then they go over and they rack their gun. And I can only imagine that's just a bad training scar from drive out, do this kind of thing over and over. They're trying to do it so fast instead of breaking the simulation. So again, pull the trigger. Okay. Take a pause. The gun will have fired. Now we can rack it and do the same thing again. Reacquire the sights, pull the trigger. Let's try again with something else. Again, make sure I don't have any ammo around here. There's no way that I could get ammunition mixed up. And I'm going at a super slow speed as well. You can add a draw into the mix. You can add movement. I'm doing this stationary, no holster, no nothing. Another firearm is something like a rifle, like an AR-15. There we go. This is my other AR-15, SBR, and Connecticut legal, go figure, with a suppressor. So I still actually haven't shot this yet, but right now I have the reader mount on here. I said in my last video I was going to do a video on that. I like it. There will be a video, I promise, but I want to shoot the gun before I get one out. Anyway, that said, unlike a Glock that doesn't have a safety on it, the only real control you have to worry about when you're dry firing is your trigger. Obviously, you can practice magazine manipulation, magazine release, and slide manipulation, stuff like that as well, dry. You don't have to worry about engaging or disengaging the safety on the handgun, the Glock. Some handguns are like that, like a 1911. You will incorporate those features. Something like an AR, you should get used to using the safety. I have a ambi safety on here. You can actually see, whoop, that's fire and that's safe. This is a semi-automatic firearm, so it doesn't have the full auto trigger group. So that's it. This is a good way to make sure everything is set up good for your body. So for example, in this case, I can press out and I'm pressing out on that sling. The stock is not touching my body here, or the brace is not touching my body. This is Form 1 as an SBR, so that's fine. But anyway, over here, I have the firearm pointed in the direction. Now remember, if I'm practicing for a certain range, you have a height over bore thing to worry about here. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it yet. That's another video on its own. But anyway, I get my sights, safety off, fire. Again, simulation breaks. This is a little different because I can't just do a quick manipulation or something on the firearm. I have to kind of break it in and charge it. You can also charge it like this, but in order to do that, I have to kind of undo myself from the sling, or like if I pull it up like this, I can't really get to it because the sling's in the way. What I have to do is I have to break the gun a little further and charge it. I have an extended charging handle on the driver's side of the firearm, on the left-hand side, so I can easily get up this way and rack it. So, again, make sure up on target, safety off, fire, simulation breaks, charge the firearm, reset the safety. Now, the AR-15, you can't reset the safety until you recharge the gun. Just get used to it. When you shoot, I like to kind of practice the safety itself without actually pulling the trigger. Up on target, safety off, safety back on as I get off target. So the only time my safety's off is when I'm on target, and it's okay if the gun shoots. Safety off when I come off target. That way, if I'm moving around, running around, slip, trip, fall, some guy grabs for my firearm, anything like that, safety's on to give me that added layer of security. You can also use this to practice your sling transitions, your shoulder manipulation. So again, if you're going to a different shoulder, you can do that. You have to kind of get out of the sling, and it's important to know that. Otherwise, you're going to choke yourself out. So it's good to practice those things. You can also practice flashlight manipulation. Bonus section, 1911s. Great, great pistols. Love them. This is a Colt railgun wearing a Streamlight TLR1HL. This is the 1000 lumen, I believe. I'm not looking at the gun, by the way. I'm not looking down the muzzle. I'm looking at the front of it, but not down the muzzle. Anyway, this gun is unloaded and has an ND with the light, has a safety. This is an ambidextrous safety. But in order to do any kind of manipulation with the gun, you have to have that safety off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice dry firing with this, just to kind of drill down that point again of on target, safety can come off. When you're off target, safety goes back on. Let's try this. So I'm off target. My gun is still pointed in a safe direction. The target could be wherever, but I decide the target's now over here. From here, in that direction, if everything in a cone around that thing is safe, like if I launch a bullet and it misses, and goes into a field or hits a very sturdy wall or something around the bad guy or whatever I'm potentially intending to shoot, I can take that safety off. I prefer not to until I'm actually sights pretty damn close to where I'm going to be. But once I'm in a good spot, I can take that safety off. What I don't want to do is I don't want to have the habit of having the safety off and moving the gun around through lines of fire. Once it's kind of tracking target, then the safety can come off and you can drive up, as long as you're relatively confident to the level that you have to be with dealing with potentially lethal force, that you're good to go. Okay, so from here, my safety is on. I'm kind of indexed to my body. I'm not doing a retention shooting or anything, but I'm indexed relative to my torso. When I turn my torso, the gun turns with me. I line myself, I orient myself up with whatever I'm trying to shoot. From here, I begin my presentation. Once I'm confident that if the gun fires, a bullet will hit that thing, whether we're talking full-size man torso or whatever, then I'm okay taking my safety off. My sights are lined up good enough. And from here, I'm just refining my sights. Now, I don't have a clear sight picture, but I have a pretty good proprioceptic view of where the barrel's tracking. Again, that comes with experience. You've got to be really confident with what you're doing. So I would recommend practicing taking your safety off pretty much when you can see your sights and you're refining that sight picture. From here, I have my sights on target. My safety is off. My finger is still off the trigger. If I decide not to fire, I can pull the gun back, and as I do, safety goes back on. Get in that habit. You don't even have to pull the trigger. Safety off, gun on target. When I decide to shoot, finger goes to the trigger, and I can shoot. 1911s are kind of cool. You can cock them manually. You would never really do that in real life, but again, this is resetting that dry fire system. So from here, gun shoots. You can also leave the safety off and rack the gun, but again, I like to have that intentional pause between the firing of the gun, or perceived simulated firing of the gun, and okay, let's go on to the next bit. That's when you would rack it or cock the hammer or whatever. As you break off of that target, safety goes back on. Get in that habit. Get yourself in the habit of always having the safety on when you are not directly on target, whether it's a 1911, an AR-15-ish gun, or something similar to that, or a scattergun.